So factoring definition is rewrite an expression as a product of its factors. So we're going to look at factoring quadratic trinomials when the number in front of the x squared is either a positive 1 or a negative 1. When the number in front of x squared is something other than positive or negative 1, factoring gets a little bit more complicated. So we'll get there, but we're going to start only with positive and negative 1. Factoring a quadratic trinomial is essentially a few-step process. First step that I want you to do if you are factoring a quadratic trinomial is to set up two sets of parentheses that are spread out far enough that you're going to be able to put a variable, an add or subtract, and a number in each one. So you set up your parentheses. Your second step is whatever variable we're dealing with, which in this case is x's, but it could be any variable. You're going to put one of the variables in the first slot of each set of parentheses. Your third step is to find the numbers. You were looking for two numbers that multiply to c, the number that doesn't have any x's, and add to b, the number in front of x. Once you find those two numbers, which is probably the trickiest part of this whole thing, find the numbers and then you place the numbers into the parentheses with your variables and you have your factor. And you have your factorization. We are going to write each of A, B, and C in factored form. So first step, set up parentheses. So even if you are stuck on a problem, you should be able to at least, if you know you have to factor, you should be able to at least get the parentheses in and get the variables in the first slots. Okay. Now the next part is finding the numbers. So this is how I recommend you set this up. You don't have to. You might be able to do it in your head. And hopefully as we practice, more of you will be able to do it in your head. But look at the last number, the number that doesn't have any x's, and it is a 20. I want you to think about, or list, whichever you need to do, all the factors that, all the number sets that multiply to 20. So I typically start with 1. 1 times 20, and 2 times 10, and 3 doesn't go into 20, but 4 times 5. Okay. Now, I want you to think about the sign right here in front of our last number and the sign right here. Are they positive or negative? If, in this case, 20 has a positive sign, it means that our two numbers are both going to be the same sign. Positive means same sign. Positive here means both positive. So 1 and 20 add up to 21, 2 and 10 add up to 12, and 4 and 5 add up to 9. I'm looking for the one that adds up to 9. So there are my numbers. Okay. So you find your numbers and they are both positive. So some of you might write down x plus 5 and then x plus 4. That's fine. I might do x plus 4 and then x plus 5. It doesn't matter what order we do those in. Okay. So B, first step. Put the parentheses. And the variables. Our variable in this case again is x. And then we need to think of two numbers that multiply to negative 72, which means the signs are going to be opposite of each other and add up to 14. So we're looking for a difference of 14. So again, I could use 1 and 72, but that's not going to give me a difference of 14. 2 and 36, not a difference of 14. 3 and 24, not a difference of 14. Does 4 go into 72? Yep. 4 and 18, difference of 14? Yeah, 4 and 18 have a difference between them of 14. We want them to add up to positive 14. So 18 is larger, so it should be positive since our number is positive. So I would use positive 18 and negative 4. What's different about C? What's different about C from A and B? It has a negative out front. Okay? That negative out front is going to mess us up unless we can kind of get rid of it. And we can't make it disappear. Okay? But we can adjust by factoring that negative out of everything. So put a negative out front and change the signs of everything inside. Then we're still going to set up our parentheses. Okay? And we're still going to put our variable in each one. We're just going to have that negative hanging out front. We're still going to look for two numbers that, in this case, multiply to 12 and add to negative 13. So the positive 12 tells me that they are the same sign. The negative 13 tells me they are both negative. So I could do negative 1 and negative 12. I could do negative 2 and negative 6. I could do negative 3 and negative 4. Which one is going to give me my negative 13? And if we just add them, we can see, if you didn't already figure it out, that negative 1 and negative 12 are going to give us our negative 13. So here is our factored form. So there are times when we can factor an expression by taking out a common factor, something that every single term has in common as a factor. So what numbers go into 6? 2 and 3, right? I mean 1 and 6 also, but we're focusing on 2 and 3 and 6. What about 9? 3 and 3. Do they have any factors in common? Yes, they are both divisible. So 6 and 9 have 3 in common as a factor. And they each have 1n, right? 1 has 2, 1 has 1, we take the lower number. So if we take out a 3 and an n out of 6n, what's 6 divided by 3? 2. And n squared divided by n is going to leave us with just n. And 9 divided by 3 gives us 3, and we already took out the n. So sometimes we can factor out a number and or a variable that can help us solve a quadratic equation. Okay. This is a quadratic. We can factor it. Now I know that either this has to equal 0 or this has to equal 0. Sometimes we can factor out a number of a more complicated quadratic, which will make it possible for us to factor it further into two binomials. So if we look at 4 and 20 and 56, the factors of 4 are 2 and 2, right? What things multiply to 20? 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20. So this one is divisible by 4, and this one is divisible by 4. Is 56 divisible by 4? $14? 4 times 14? So all of those are divisible by 4. I can't make those 4's disappear because I don't have an equation. But I can have a 4 multiplied by 1x squared. 20 divided by 4 gives me 5x. 56 divided by 4 gives me 14. And now we have a quadratic trinomial that we can attempt to factor. Two numbers that multiply to negative 14, so the signs are going to be opposite, and they add to 5. So 1 and 14, 2 and 7. So 2 and 7, and I want to end up with a positive 5, which means my larger number 7 needs to be positive. So negative 2 and positive 7.